We used to say the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. We don't have to say that anymore because left and right are hand in hand. Whatever I say next about the left or the right, what I really mean is the old guard, the uniparty, the establishment. What I've been watching this week is the further collapse of what still calls itself the left into deluded anti-human madness. Truly a wonder to behold. Here in the UK, there's a newly minted government calling itself Labour. Many of us remember when the Labour Party of the United Kingdom stood for the rights of working people, or at least it said it did. We could debate how sincere and authentic was that stance and that claim, but at least there was a time when representatives of the Labour Party, many of whom came from working backgrounds, coal miners, steel workers and the like, at least appeared to challenge those demonstrably intent on taking advantage of working people or on treating working people with out-and-out contempt. That British Labour Party was also patriotic, proud of the heritage and history of people descended from ancestors who'd built Britain, often with their bare hands, people who'd fought and often died for Britain. There was a strong anti-war element too, driven by those who understood that war is just another way to get rid of inconvenient people while making billions at the same time. I could go on, but my point is that the Labour Party in this country, indeed the so-called left in this country, used to at least pose, and quite convincingly, to be fair, as a bulwark between the people and the autocrats and authoritarians who wanted only to milk the people for whatever could be had from them. By now, however, the Labour Party, whatever it once was, whatever its founder Keir Hardie had in mind in the beginning, is now a flayed skin, flayed from the backs of the workers and worn as a cynical disguise, so that the Labour Party is no more and no less than sheep's clothing worn by the wolf itself. Anything authentic and heartfelt by that Labour Party by what the Labour Party once represented is utterly gone, never to return, for good or ill. It's interesting always to remember that the original logo of the Fabian Society, founded in 1884 and dedicated to achieving socialism not by revolution but by stealth, was that self-same wolf in sheep's clothing. The Fabians, still alive and sneaking, are named after a Roman general, Fabius, remembered for his tactic of patiently wearing down his enemies over time. Now the empty, heartless marionette that is Labour has cast aside the wants of workers. Safe borders, stable communities, energy that's affordable and reliable, employment based on merit and not to meet inclusivity and diversity targets. Labour now, just like the Conservatives before, and as I said at the top, the other side of the uniparty coin is every bit as empty, disingenuous, existing only to serve the needs of the globalist agenda, its representatives being no more than factotums, puppetitions moved by strings pulled from above. The party that once claimed to stand for workers, in my view, stands now for smothering arable land beneath solar panels, chasing farmers out of the food business in a time of worldwide food uncertainty, for impoverishing what remains of the middle class, for committing billions as yet unearned by the taxpayers who'll foot the bill to 100 years of war in Ukraine, a war not for democracy, but only to secure the return on investments made by transnational corporations like BlackRock, to secure access to Ukrainian oil for the enrichment of the same corporate entities that profit still from the Iraqi oil made available by the illegal Iraq war, the war that killed 1 million civilians. The usual suspects like ExxonMobil, Chevron and Halliburton. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky was the guest of the Labour cabinet this week, colours firmly nailed to the mast there. Today's UK Labour government, as far as a reasonable person might conclude, might as well be in the business of financing the spilling of torrents of blood in pursuit of pumping oil, not here at home for domestic profit, but thousands of miles away for foreign corporations, knowingly standing by while innocent people of a land far away are slaughtered so that the rich of other foreign countries grow richer still. In my view, the Labour Party of this country is an abject and shameful travesty of anything the word left ever meant. Ironically, left now means only what it always meant, even to people with no interest in politics, which is to say, left is the opposite of everything that's right, right with a small r, right as in true. Nowadays, that which calls itself the left has descended into a decadent, spectacular self-destruct mode, not just here, but all over the world. It's likely that the self-destruction is deliberate, since politics are no longer required in a uniparty, in a one-world government world in which right and left are meaningless anachronisms. Every day, the left, that other side of the uniparty coin, is more exposed as only the manifestation of greed, envy, and hate. Across the pond, in the USA, the madness of the left seems to be at fever pitch as well, frothing at the mouth, bug-eyed bonkers, in fact. I keep thinking things can get no crazier there in the home of the brave, but over and over I find I must only wait a bit for things to get crazier yet, so we'll see. The left in American politics manifests in the main as the Democratic Party, of course. That's what we're invited to believe, at least, since left is as meaningless there as here. It's hard to see those so-called Democrats, once the party of Jack and Bobby Kennedy, as anything but irrelevant now, rendered that way by their having given in, it would appear, to undisguised, full-blown hatred of anyone and everyone that stands in opposition to the naked application of power. In my opinion, the Democrats are now the monsters their predecessors once claimed to exist to fight. A notion like a person's character being more important than their skin colour is just one of many platitudes cast aside as yet more flayed skins, empty and dead as the sheep's skin cloaking the reality of UK Labour. All this inversion of what had gone before, of the turning inside out and upside down of morality, of sanity itself, surely reached some kind of peak in the immediate aftermath of the bloodying of Donald Trump at the rally in Pennsylvania. So filled with seething hatred are the Democrats and the craven, paid-for mainstream media that dances to their hellish tune, hatred not just of Donald Trump, but of any fellow citizen that prefers him to the human wreck that is President Joe Biden. So surrendered to hatred are those posing as Democrats and their ilk. Their instinctive responses to the blood and bullets were either to pretend nothing much had happened or to say President Trump had brought it all upon himself. I was especially struck by the reflexive tendency towards making light of the firing of live rounds when a man, a husband and father, was killed in the same moment as the winging of Trump by a bullet to the brain. That tragedy for a family, but also, given the circumstances, for any nation claiming to be civilised, or at least claiming to value the well-being of its people, appeared not to matter. What mattered was to dismiss the apparent attempt on the life of the former president, who, in the end, seemed to be saved not by any action by what we're invited to believe is the best equipped, best financed Secret Service on the planet, but rather moving his head at the last moment, and then his having had the presence of mind to drop behind the armoured cladding on the front of the stage. Whatever happened that day, whoever is behind it and why, an innocent man is dead. Other innocents are injured. I say again, the left has lost it. The left has dropped the mask, thrown it away entirely. The left has given in to the base nature of the worst of people, given in to hatred. I watched the developing story of the shooting, how the politicians and the legacy media took a breath, saw the writing on the wall, and started rolling out the rhetoric about America being no place for violence of any kind. In ways I can't fathom myself, the American left seemed to run out of words, so that some of their morning mainstream media shows, Morning Joe on MSNBC, for example, decided not to comment, opting only for rolling news. It seems to me that when they no longer felt self-righteous and safe doing the only thing they'd been doing, which is loudly hating Trump and finding forms of words that previously had sought to make him a target of one sort or another, they were left with nothing to say. No policies, no point. When hating Trump was off the table, even for them, they had nothing at all. A person might think that if the Democrats really believe Trump is like Hitler or Stalin, as they've been howling for months, calling him a fascist and a would-be dictator, if that comparison to dictators of the past came from somewhere authentic, something honestly heartfelt. They would truly want rid of him once and for all. But when whatever happened, happened, when Donald Trump dropped on that stage and then appeared blood-stained and defiant moments later, the so-called left had nothing but hollow calls for unity and an end to hateful rhetoric, when hateful rhetoric has been their only stock in trade. When push came to shove, even their hatred was hollow, as it turned out, empty. In the end, exposed to the bright light of day, the American left aren't even convincing baddies. All of it makes a person, a thinking person, wonder just what on earth we're being invited to watch now. There's an emptiness about all of it. Beneath the bellowing voices, the theatrically bared teeth, reality is hard to find. Sincerity seems absent. All of it has an unmistakable end of empire feel about it as well. And the scramble, or perhaps the coordinated effort, a last desperate effort to distract us from the fakery of it all, behind the stages, the podiums, the looming shadow, is global war. Last week, George Robertson, exhumed from the graveyard of the House of Lords, was sounding off in his role as leader of the UK Strategic Defence Review. Robertson is now warning everyone who'll listen that we, as in the West, we must get militarily serious about what he describes as the serious threat posed by China and others in the East. He is only echoing Admiral Bauer, NATO's senior military officer, who's been telling NATO allies of the need to prepare what he called a whole-of-society approach to war. To me, that sounds a lot like working towards conscription. Bauer has talked of the need for more bodies, which seems like an unfortunate choice of words in the context of the meat grinder in Ukraine that has minced countless thousands of bodies and counting. Here's the thing. I talked about the apparent madness of the so-called left, a madness little different, if at all, from the madness of the so-called right. What worries me is that it's not madness, nothing out of control, nothing as it seems. What worries me most of all is that behind all the fireworks is nothing more than the cold-blooded determination to keep the rich rich and the powerful powerful. They want only to keep the money and power, and to achieve that, they would march our children to war. If that day comes, I know who I'll be going to war with.